This video is sponsored by KnucklesOX, Baba Snake, Julio the Boy, Blazing Darkness G, and Danny Mash X. If you'd like to directly support my content, as well as catch it early, have your name credited as a sponsor, or maybe even have your What If Ideas produce its commissions, consider visiting the links to my Patreon and such in the description below. Our story resumes on the personal ship of Cooler and his armored squadron as it cruises through a nebula. After their stop off at a Frieza Force planet that had fallen into recent disarray and chaos, Cooler wasted little time in loading the 2 Saiyans he found on the excursion onto his vessel. After they had regained enough of their vigor to survive being transferred from one medical machine to another, of course. Thankfully, his Saiyan salvagees were both feeling a bit more talkative during this process, and thus shed more light on the events they claimed to have taken part in on Earth that brought them to this point, including the existence of other Saiyans who had successfully escaped Frieza's attempts at extermination for the race, and furthermore, confirmation of the existence and validity of the mysterious power of a species called Namekians, something known as Dargon or Dragon Balls. However, this useful information couldn't simply give the eldest son of Code an advantage and allow him to feel smug. Of course, it had to come with some awful news that Cooler simply could not accept. While Prince Vegeta fairly obviously had issues with coming to terms with his current position, the need to submit, and humbly offer as much intel as he possibly could in exchange for his life. But on the other hand, whether it hurt his pride or not, the older Saiyan with the prince known as Turles seemed to almost enjoy stirring the pot as it were, going so far as to painstakingly detail just how outmatched he was at multiple points, despite his certainty that he'd ascended in power past even the old Saiyan hierarchy of class, destroying and then redefining what it meant to be elite. And thus the former space pirate felt he would inevitably next claim the title of legendary Super Saiyan. As a result, any Saiyan stronger than him, of course, simply had to be the legend itself, fully realized. Of course, after declaring these bold words, bordering more on threat than warning, the Saiyans needed to return to treatment directly afterwards if they were ever to make a full recovery and be made useful once again. But long after they've left, their words and revelations as to the true nature of the universal upheaval irked the would-be emperor still. Even if the dust settled on Earth, the vacuum of space remained far from silent. And so Cooler, ever the pragmatist compared to his brother's vanity, set his sights on the world that had humiliated his new Saiyan recruits, and by extension, the Cold Name. Having never truly paid heed or been afraid of the warning of their ancestor, he would just nip that little myth in the bud immediately as a small errand on his way to the rendezvous with Frieza and father, using it as both a means to test his new limits, since a recent discovery he made concerning his transformations has him curious, but also to prove even before they reconvene that he is Frieza's better and the rightful heir to the Empire. But as he prepared the coordinates, the very air in his chambers grew frigid, and the scouters of Salza, Dore, and Nez would suddenly explode violently and fatally on their faces, warning of a dangerous new power level, as a shimmering, ghostly silhouette appears in front of the ship, followed by its owner arriving in a flash of strong ki and floating confidently in the cold vacuum of space, despite being rather small and only equipped with a tattered-looking cloak. "Who's this getting in my way now? And you dare harm my men? You have a death wish, little one. I have business to attend to, and you're delaying me," Cooler gripes, moving to exit the ship and reduce the intruder to space dust as he sees the figure raise a hand and prepare a bright purple ki blast. "Be thankful that I am. Death is a concept I left behind long ago, but you haven't yet, child. Simply consider me a root of your twisted and wicked little tree. And I'm here to tell you that if you go to that miserable mud ball now, the tree burns." Then suddenly, as the light of the stranger's ki blast grows blinding, there is a devastating explosion of information suddenly within Cooler's mind, as he's assaulted with a quick flashing flood of images and an ocean of feelings, as a rush of foresight that shows the outcome of his desired act of revenge, pettiness, and rebellion washes over him. He and the armored squadron arrive on the planet and confront a Saiyan woman, a Namekian, various Earthlings, and some ridiculous pet reptile. Their actions lead just nearly to the depths of all who oppose them as intended, but in the effort, his armored squadron are picked off one by one, until he alone stands in front of the Saiyan woman, whom he at first believes has no hope of possibly defeating him after the debut of his newly discovered fifth form. That is, until of all things, Cooler kills a bloody bird, and then he opens his eyes to see himself sitting in his captain's chair, and staring off into empty space at a figure who doesn't exist, and feeling fear for events that haven't actually transpired, as Salza and the others are once again standing with their scouters undamaged, like the strange encounter with that messenger never even happened. But he can't forget, because Cooler undoubtedly saw his own defeat, a humiliation far worse than Frieza's. He actually saw the warning, the legend, a blonde, golden-powered warrior, and the end of his reign, as he was blasted into this solar system's sun like some cheap cartoon villain. And whether that strange vision means the legend really is true, and a Super Saiyan resides on and protects planet Earth, or if this is merely him being caught up in superstition and hogwash from Saiyans and their foolish pride like Frieza, remains unclear. But still, the eldest son of King Cold recognizes that a new plan of action is required, and thus Cooler redirects. He won't attack Earth, not yet. Instead, he will heed the stupid warning. He orders his fleet to rendezvous with his father immediately, since otherwise, he couldn't gift his Saiyans over to Frieza as a show of support, turning them into double agents, and using them to find out what Frieza knows about Namek, and whatever his true intentions for the Dragon Balls are, since the older brother doubts he'll be completely forthcoming. Though unbeknownst to even Cooler, this is a part of Turles' scheme as well, as whose specific banner he works under to get started again doesn't matter to him, as long as he and Vegeta get a chance to act as the ultimate wild cards when they make it to this Namek place, a nice chance at some good fights, and then a shot at making their own wish. We resume again with Muezli on the trail of Bardock and the boys in the Heater mothership as they make their way deeper into the universe and whatever stupid trouble Bardock has gotten them all wrapped into. Her sleek attack pod style scout class ship cutting through the silent void of space, but not moving at the same rate as Elect's vest thankfully. Aside from having her space eagle-eyed cerulean vision and tracking skills, Muezli can do a lot more than just follow a trajectory. She knows how to follow a story and rumors. Or rather, she is following a wake of change, once again landing on a planet along the way for supplies and some time to get out and stretch from spending so much time in the cramped spaceship, as she just isn't a fan of its suspended animation functions, which usually put occupants to sleep over long voyages. So once again, she ends up finding a bustling alien market, recently liberated by what she is fairly certain are Bardock and his group, immediately noticing how few people even look over their shoulders any longer for remnants of the Frieza Force, and the few times it is necessary to do so, Muezli is thankfully able to clean up the last few dregs of Frieza's cronies, who may have either slipped by or been too cowardly to fight the new Team Bardock head on. It is definitely aggravating that she constantly remains a few cycles behind, using her skills to track the residue of her family's key signatures, and seeing for herself the story that has transpired on each planet she touches down on along the way of her journey. And what she can get from the locals is always some variation of the same story. The Frieza Force had control of these planets not long ago, and would often demand tributes or fees in exchange for their mercy or protection. Protection from other Frieza Force soldiers, that is. Meaning it wasn't all that merciful. In fact, some who testified to her are even bold or crazy enough to claim themselves resurrected from the dead, though this did not mean that they were the ones who fought off their oppressors and murderers. Sometimes it was tales of a young Saiyan child wielding a magic weapon and the mastery of the martial arts. Sometimes a bolt of energy fired with the truest aim one could imagine would incapacitate Frieza's soldiers before they could even exit their attack pods. Sometimes the terrifying beast known universe-wide as a conqueror, the Yuzaru, would appear mysteriously and scare away the soldiers, demanding they spread the word of its awesome and terrifying might before disappearing just as suddenly as it came. And a few times, giant weapons would appear out of nowhere and then would tear apart their foes, as if the wrath of a god of war was called down in their time of need. She never hears any stories of a grown Saiyan man with a scar, unfortunately, but she doesn't necessarily have to, in order to put two very obvious points together for a correct answer here, partly due to easily recognizing the feel of the ki of Goku, Granolah, Raditz, and even Gas, but also because she's seeing bits of Bardock's energy rubbing off on their own, the longer these multiple weeks of tracking and battle have turned into months of travel time. Even if that weren't the case, it wouldn't be hard to figure out that the final thing tying the stories she's been hearing together had been the appearance of the Heater crew not long after the Saviors passed through, in order to both re-establish contacts and informants, as well as get in touch with business associates of both his and Frieza on these recently liberated planets. And at the same time, Elec has apparently put bounties on the heads of this new Team Bardock, even including Gas, since it works in his favor on multiple levels. He can use that to spread their deeds and how much of a threat they are to the Frieza Force, while also at least publicly seeming to still be on Frieza's side, if not more loyal and trustworthy than ever. While for the Saiyans, and even the non-Saiyan combatants, it basically brings free training partners and interesting fights to them, as assorted bounty hunters will come for their heads, allowing them to grow from those fights and steadily increase their own chances of victory, as well as being a way to easily siphon away ranks of the Frieza Force by offering alternative payment, allowing Elec to army build under the guise of simply expanding the number of contractors he associates with. And best of all, if someone actually manages to kill the family and cash in on the bounty, Elec gets an upgrade to a better class of warrior, so it's win-win for him. And therein lies Muesli's growing worry. Bardock's plan was already stupid enough on its own, but just allowing himself and their kids to be painted up as some heroes or legends for all these people, and on Elec's credit, is a debt they won't be able to ever pay off, so she just hopes he knows what he's doing. As the taller she hears the tales grow, the more faith she begins to lose in Bardock, and she was only getting in deeper with Elec with each planet they stopped at, and she was now simply hoping to reach him before the Heater boss stopped finding him the boys useful like he did Turles. Well, perhaps that's an over-exaggeration born out of a bad habit of hers in bad-mouthing him. Idiot or not, they are lovers now. Still felt weird to say, even just to herself though. Didn't make it any less important that she remembered that, as there was one more part of the story, her favorite part. Every time after the soldiers were driven off, a mysterious cloaked man would arrive, and with their strength and wisdom, would either help the people of the planet restore or better harvest a key resource, learn to cultivate something new, or even amongst a small few people, like the elders of these communities, the mysterious man would impart on them the knowledge of how to sense and somewhat control their ki, telling them to pass it down to their strongest warriors, and to get powerful enough to protect themselves, keeping their home from being conquered again, either economically or otherwise. It may have been a tad cheesy and idealistic, but she did love that Bardock was, intentionally or not, acting like a true leader and a noble warrior, rather than just the thug for hire by elect. However, her journey out thus far has not been for naught, as now, she can see with her own two eyes the planet light years away Bardock has been subtly plotting a course to. A bright green ball of light a few light years away she has a hunch she already knows the name of. And also, why Bardock wouldn't have gone there immediately to make wishes. Our story shifts its focus once again, as we return to the moment we left off in Bardock's memories, and his reunion with Cognac and his former teammates in the afterlife. His only logical decision left being to surrender and admit his defeat. However, not only is the younger scarred Saiyan unwilling to be logical and surrender, his ambitions had only begun to burn hotter. He was done testing his strength, and now wanted nothing more than to surpass and bury the legacy of his father and the old guard of Saiyans, pulling one last time on the experiences and knowledge his time on Earth has imparted to prove the peaceful planet and its people have only made him stronger. That it's okay for a Saiyan to live for their kin, and not just for the kill. To pull this off, he suddenly turns tail and seemingly runs away, making a beeline for King Kai's house. This looks like cowardice to his father and friends, but it's a strategy Bardock could see Goku, Raditz, Roshi, Granolah, or Grandpa Gohan employing. At least maybe if they were crazy enough. Inside the house, the junior scarred Saiyan scans the room for the quote-unquote weapons of the life he left behind on Earth, having a complete trust in them to see him through because of the reliable people they remind him of. Unwilling to allow an escape, Cognac orders Pumpkin and Totepo to follow, but in their short-sightedness at this pursuit, the two large warriors realize too late that they can't both fit through the doorway at once. As they jam into the frame and cause it to crack, Bardock is already moving. He snatches a heavy wooden ladle from King Kai's counter, a quick flash of Gine crossing his mind, as he painfully remembers her brandishing one when he tracked mud into her kitchen one too many times. With a mimicked but masterfully key and powered flick of the wrist, he uses the spoon to parry Totepo's massive fist through Pumpkin's chubby but glass jaw and into the doorframe, before comboing in a point-blank key wave, blowing the two of them and the entire wall away, and leaving them both unconscious in a heap of rubble, as King Kai screams in horror at the property damage, more so than the creative Saiyan carnage. Saipa and Tomo rush through the smoke and dust kicked up and take aim, but Bardock is ready with a bottle of glass cleaner and a rag, suppressing his energy and obscuring himself, subsequently letting their blast pass harmlessly through one of King Kai's other load-bearing walls. Muesli's voice now echoes in his head about keeping a clear line of sight, as he with advantage from stealth sprays a stinking mist of cleaner directly into Salipa's eyes, then using her blinded momentum and his rolled up cloth to trip right into Toma's path, and then finally wrapping the rag around his best friend's wrist to brutally over-shoulder slam him down onto the blinded Saiyan woman, knocking her out as well. As Toma recovers, igniting his signature fiery ki, Bardock doesn't back down. Instead, he grabs an ornate ceramic teapot from the table, one that reminds him of the quiet afternoon spent with Grandpa Gohan on Mount Paozu. He dodges Toma's strike with a fluid circular motion, using the teapot to catch and then redirect Toma's heat-based energy back at him. The tomato namesake Saiyan is caught off guard, and Bardock finishes the job by spitting a mouthful secretly swigged from King Kai's hidden hard liquor stash with enough force to blow through the diverted flames like a flamethrower, catching his old second-in-command in a blaze of blue fire of his own making, leaving him to desperately try to put out the painful burns engulfing his currently immortal body. Bardock steps out of the wreckage of the kitchen as King Kai's house begins to collapse. Holding only the handle of the shattered teapot, he looks at Cognac, who is growling at the goofy and unorthodox tactics. Spoons, cleaning supplies, a tea set, booze. You get cornered like a rat and you can't even show an ounce of Saiyan pride? That shit won't beat Turles, and it definitely won't avenge the Saiyans. You're making a mockery of our bloodline, Bardock. Oh, cram it. As if I can ever do any worse a job at that than you deadbeat. Now as they stand apart, Bardock and Cognac are still both spent, but unlike the father, still raging and lusting for more battle, as it was his one and only means of understanding and communicating with his son. Bardock has become peaceful and serene, seeming almost satisfied now as he stood toe-to-toe from his progenitor. Likely thanks to the fact that he has finally realized that he couldn't simply cut out his past. Cognac, and everything he stood for, the brutality, the pride, the mistakes, were the very things that had tempered him to move forward. To get stronger, he didn't need to destroy his father's legacy. He needed to absorb its lessons and learn from its examples. To truly surpass him. I spent so long trying to be the opposite of you, trying to wash the blood off my hands. But I've realized the things you taught me, how to endure, how to stay standing, even when the whole galaxy wants you dead. Those are the reasons my sons are still breathing. Lowering his guard, and looking at Bardock confused, and still secretly planning to hit him with a surprise final spirit cannon, Cognac is stunned. So, you aren't ashamed, and you don't hate me enough to want to fight anymore? I'm ashamed of the lives we took for no reason. Ashamed of picking on the weak for Frieza's sake. But I accept the strength it gave me, and what I can do with it now. So I'll take that fire and passion you gave me, and use it to keep all my friends and family, including Turles, safe and warm, instead of just burning everything in sight. Finally shutting up for once since they've reunited, the senior scarred Saiyan, despite Bardock still speaking to him rather boldly, lets out a short bark of a laugh. It's the first time he looks truly, genuinely at peace. Where Bardock actually was expecting to make one last lunge or attack, the old Saiyan instead stood up straight and called out to the other Saiyans around him, stating their business done here, and his interest in Bardock all satisfied. So now it was back to hell with all of them where they belonged, doubting his capacity to spare any kinder words for his father in an attempt to reach whatever form of reconciliation that was still open to them. Bardock instead offers the man a small respectful nod and a small two-fingered salute, focusing more on saying his proper goodbyes to Team Bardock, as well as informing them that as of right now, reviving them, at least aside from Cognac, is still a part of his plan to take down Frieza somehow. So to say the very least, he was grateful for their help now, all their help, even his father, for reminding him exactly who he never wanted to be again, and why he still needs more power than he currently has to do it. As this final page of the dreams of Cognac is turned, Bardock is brought back into the present, finding himself in a dim, smoke-filled lounge on a neutral moon. Alien miners, low-level crooks, and bounty hunters huddle over glowing drinks and games. In a central booth of this seedy space bar, the new Team Bardock is piled together. Plates of strange roasted meats are stacked high, while Kakarot and Raditz are eating with typical Saiyan ferocity, as Gas and Granolah show far less enthusiasm. Of course, the life of a universal revolutionary wasn't always exciting chases and laser fire. Between their liberations, there were the long quiet stretches of travel and training, and the rare, rowdy stops at neutral spaceports, where the Frieza Force usually didn't show their faces. These outings usually always went the same. Goku would mention liking Earth food better despite appearing to enjoy alien cuisine all the same, while Raditz and Granolah would worry about how low and higher profile they were remaining while out and about respectively. Finally, Gas would be a total killjoy and would start a loud and annoying bratty argument between himself and his other diminutive teammates, seeing no reason for them to eat and drink among common laborers, mercenaries, and bounty hunters. In fact, always tried to get them to eat quickly and avoid tarnishing Elek's investment as he called it. They'd argued about it before, of course, and Bardock was always quick to break things up when he could. Elek is paying for results, not family dinners. But as a part of their lessons in the ways of the space-traveling warrior, Bardock was trying to make sure the boys remember what it felt like to have something to fight and work hard to protect and develop, rather than just the anticipation of the next big and dangerous battle, and what you might be able to take or get out of it. Every Frieza soldier skull they cracked was ironically hammering that lesson in harder and harder. Thus, enjoying dinners and training in the vital art of turning off the edge when it's unneeded is exactly what Elek is paying for, especially if he wanted this little rebellion done right. As the scarred Saiyan knew firsthand, soldiers who were unable to do so were the quickest liable to snap. Finishing their meal and making their way back to the small heater vessel they had been traveling in, Bardock notices the waiting call from Elek and reluctantly answers it, trying to remember once again why he even decided to work with a snake like this, as a sinister sneer comes into view over their call. He had put it off for as long as he reasonably could with King Kai's help, but it was instantly clear by the look in Elek's eyes and the way he greeted them this time that the first part of their deal was now over. The heater confirmed as much when he informed them of a valuable piece of intel he had just gotten fresh from a spy operating in the Frieza Force, detailing to him and his team that not only has Frieza gained interest in the Dragon Balls, but that he has also made the excursion a family affair of his own. Thus, any further actions on the front of simply helping out and freeing small Frieza-controlled planets would be for nothing if the Emperor could simply make his own evil wish. He's even calling on Elek's information broker services to go all in on this bet. Thus, before he does, it was finally time to meet up and make use of the coordinates for planet Namek Bardock had received from King Kai, as now the pieces are all on the board. The Z-Fighters, the Saiyans, the Heaters, and the Wicked Bloodline have all set the correct course. The hunt for the Namekian Dragon Balls begins officially next time.